Good evening, everyone. It's Carpo here, and after waking up from a brief nap of a few minutes, I had some thoughts on my mind to share, and I've been putting it off for a while now, distracted doing other things, but I want to start off by making a bold statement here. I guess I should just title this video, Love is Not the Answer. And I don't like to be I don't like to sound as if I'm being, what's the word I'm looking for? Oh, there's a lot of different words, but, it's not about trying to bash those who claim that love is the true path or that love is the answer, but I've tried to figure out how to put this as kindly as possible without sounding like I'm picking on people who are, well, in this, a spiritual state. It feels like people take their essence to the extreme and think that by ignoring any, quote, negative emotions and only dwelling on the positive and only talking about love, unconditional love, is somehow going to bring them closer to truth or happiness. That there is a certain degree where we have to separate ourselves from the problems in society and not let them get to us, but we can't just close our eyes to them and pretend like they don't exist. And likewise, we can't close our eyes to our own emotions and feelings, if that makes sense. I hear people say that love is the answer, and I wonder, the answer to what question? The answer to our problems, or the answer to our society, the answer to our personal angst, or, emptiness. Being someone who has a loving family, I can honestly say that love in my life has been probably the major driving force behind, many of the things that I do towards being a better person, because I want to impress that on my family. I want my family to be good people, so I have to be a good person. But if I didn't have that love, I don't know how much motivation I would have, but I would still be the same person. As far as, I believe, looking for answers in life, it's just something that's inherent within people. But I feel like if we push out anything that's negative at all, then we're ignoring the problem. And ignoring anything never made it go away. So I ask myself, not necessarily is love the answer, but how do we utilize love properly? And one of the reasons why I seem so cynical about it, is because the word love is defined under so many different terms and factors. There are no two definitions of the word love that, while on the outside they may appear to be defined the same by words, by language, the actual feeling can never be compared. And there are many different degrees of love. For let's say a married couple, there could be anything from a distant, love due to just loving the person because you've been with them so long, all the way down to the extreme passion, which may be more like lust. And I think that we can get lost in that lust and think that it's love. But lust is what, I guess you could have lust for ideas and lust for knowledge in life. Let me try to compare something for a minute here. If you take people who just fell in love, a couple who just fell in love, that animal love, that wild just I love you, I love you, I love you, and kisses and always calling each other, and that fades over time, but the love doesn't fade. The strength and love towards the person doesn't change. It's just that initial lust has worn off. Now, if I could compare that for a moment to searching for knowledge in life, where a person, and this is kind of where I wanted to go to, that I've noticed that people tend to really attach to these new ideas, like you can tell if a person has just learned the word Illuminati, for example, or if they have just discovered Freemasonry or any type of conspiracy or secret society, Nibiru, or any of these, old ideas that may or may not exist. And you'll find these patterns where people just quote the same things over and over that you've already heard through other sources. So what I'm saying is that I had a lust for that type of knowledge for many years. And that lust just turned into a general love. So while I've set it aside, it appears on the outside that maybe I'm not interested in these things or that I'm not aware. When a person, I had somebody say a comment earlier. I was talking about, it was a comment I'd made a long time ago on a David Icke video about how I believe he's just delusional and he's taken things too far, and now he's banking on people's, awareness, whether he knows it or not, trying to say this is what's true, this is what's true. And had some, you get the same old comments, people saying, well, you need to seek more knowledge, as if looking at more things, more papers, more information is going to bring us more knowledge. It doesn't work that way. I feel like we've spent too much time with our heads in books, trying to tell us what love is, trying to tell us what's important, trying to tell us what... and this is, I can see how people can grow, unfond of literature and books, especially if they, with the archetypes within them. It becomes very difficult when I can pick up a book, say an old book, an ancient book, translated, not ancient, but let's say 1,000-year-old book, and here's some wild stories in it, such as, I can't really think of any of the great stories right now. There's quite a few. But anyway, let's just take one of those stories and understand it as an archetype, as an allegory, as it's trying to convey a message, an idea about humanity. Whereas, if I would have picked it up 20 years ago, I would have thought, oh, these are just people writing this story about something that may or may not have happened. Why are they writing like this? Because I didn't understand the deeper meanings. And now that I do, I'm not saying that I understand all of the deeper meanings, but what I mean is that I understand that most of those old stories are encoded information. Not really speaking about literal events, but rather ideas that were encoded. And then you start to see that things piece together a little more complicated than we thought, and that our ancestors did know these things, but they understood what was important. In other words, over centuries and centuries of, I guess I feel like we don't give enough credit to our ancestors for all the shit they went through. Kind of like when people say something like, well, astrology is just ancient, superstition. They just created this astrology based on the stars. And that's the opinion the person holds, right? Then you start looking into astrology and see the complications of it, and the different signs, and how they've divided it, and the constellations, and how they relate to other archetypes. And you start to see, well, no, these weren't just people making shit up. It's just that they put it in a symbolic fashion so it was easier to understand. And people tried adamantly to explain to us through history what was important, and we just wouldn't listen. And now there's people that, still believe that there's some magic encoded chant that's going to bring you into some alignment with the universe, and the fact is that I don't believe that exists. It's a personal search. It's something you have to work towards. And love is the same way. To understand love, on a deeper level, it's really important. But to say that love is all there is, or love is the most important thing, I think leaves a lot to be desired. Because if love is all that mattered, I guess it's difficult to explain, but if you have nothing to compare love to, then it wouldn't be love. If we were in a constant state of bliss, we would never understand hatred. We'd never understand sadness and angst. Because happiness is a state of not feeling bad, you see. And this is how everything in our emotional and mental state is. Without one, there's no other. Without A, there's no B. Without hot, you don't know what cold is, and vice versa. And knowing this very simple idea can change a person's life when it's applied to daily living. To really seek balance. To not just go off the deep end and say, oh, love everybody unconditionally. We can't just go out and say love everybody unconditionally, because that's just not the reality that we live in. And even if we can find a few people that will love people unconditionally, it's very difficult to believe it. You know what I mean? I mean, if you're sitting there beating the shit out of someone and they're still saying, it's okay, I respect you, I love you, you know, I mean, it's just, it's silliness, you know, because we have to use our common sense as well as our hopes and dreams about thinking that acting a certain way or a certain behavior, if we hold that behavior, is going to bring us into alignment with our true essence or spirit. So in other words, there is no one practice or idea or belief or thought pattern that we can hold in our minds all the time and not expect it to sway at times. So we can't beat ourselves up when we try to be loving but find ourselves getting angry or jealous or having some of these what you might call lesser states of being, but I don't consider them lesser because they're just balancing out the coin. So I'm not sure what else to say about that. Just thoughts on love, thoughts on life. Yeah.